Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and Accio headphones, and let the magic begin.
Apostasy by Deydralinne, Chapter 52. A Gala and Three Drunken Uncles. Headline: Terrorist group, the Order, gives its official notice of surrender following Minister Riddle's increasing success. In an unexpected move that has stunned both ministry officials and reporters alike, the radical rebel group known as the Order has announced its decision to disband and cease all hostilities. This declaration comes via an anonymous letter sent to news outlets around the world, marking the end of a brutal 7-year conflict that has left undeniable scars on the magical world. A copy of the letter, penned by an apparently senior member of the group, was delivered by Al early yesterday morning and read as follows. To the Ministry of Magic and the people of the public, after over 2 decades of relentless struggle and the pursuit of our vision for a safer world, it is with heavy hearts and weary spirits that we, the Order, collectively announce our decision to disband. Our mission, born of a deep-seated desire for the establishment of a just society free from oppression, has come at a great cost to all parties involved. The suffering inflicted upon our world can no longer be justified, and the time has come to seek a new path. We recognize the pain and destruction the actions of both sides have caused, and we extend our deepest regrets to those who have suffered. Our intentions, however noble in origin, contradict the very principles we sought to uphold. It is in this spirit of reflection that we step away from the fight in hopes that no more unnecessary bloodshed may occur. To the people of the magical world, we implore you to continue striving for a world where justice, equality, and freedom reign supreme, and to think seriously about the kind of place you want to leave behind for our future generations. May our departure serve as a catalyst for renewed dialogue and a new effort towards healing and rebuilding. Signed, the Arch-Commander of the Order of the Phoenix. The implications of this announcement are profound. The minister called for a ceasefire several months ago, which sparked an attack on Diagon Alley, killing several local residents in a fire. The Order, known for their militant approach to the ministry's governance, has been a shadow over our community for some time, which begs the question, does their decision to disband signal a true end to the war? And should they be allowed to simply slip away into the shadows if they promise not to do it again? Reactions to the letter have been mixed. High Commander Draco Malfoy welcomed the news, expressing hope for a new era of reconciliation and progress. Quoted, "This is an opportunity for us to finally be able to rebuild and move forward together," he stated. Conversely, some remain skeptical, questioning the sincerity of the Order's intentions and warning against compliancy. It seems that the old saying is relevant here, that only time will tell. Astoria, who following her release demanded that the first stop be the ministry to begin preparations, had really pulled off a spectacular feat. Hermione doubted that the ministry had ever looked so good. Silvery, shimmering stars glistened overhead, an enchantment that outdid the Hogwarts Great Hall by a mile. Black circular rugs had been placed under tables, and silver and black fabric draped along the walls gave it a less cold and sterile feel. Floating crystal chandeliers cast a white glow around the room, while grouped pillars of candles in the center of each table softened the contrast. In the corner, a small group played musical instruments while people in all white carried around trays of food and flutes of champagne. The room was bustling with the noise of various leaders from around the world, and Hermione had to hand it to her. Astoria had pulled it off. Even the seating chart took into consideration which leaders were in conflict, keeping them as far apart as possible and grouping countries that were considered allies together. Not that Hermione suspected that anyone would go as far as to cause a fuss here, but all parties had been required to commit to a temporary peace treaty while in attendance anyways. I think it is the next logical step for our population. It isn't the 1700s. Muggles aren't burning people to stake anymore, and realistically, I believe that the benefits to each side outweigh the need for secrecy. It made sense when the Muggles were still stuck in their advancement, but surely you have seen where they have ended up, Minister. Jen Sevenson, Swedish Minister for Magic, hummed and thought. While that is true, I believe that this requires more thought than to be rushed through. What is the hurry? I will be honest with you. I personally would have preferred to take my time to meet with each country and discuss it in depth. Talk about what any concerns for your people might be, and what the future would look like for them. However, the International Confederation of Wizards has set a hearing date, as I am sure you are aware, and it was a lot sooner than anticipated. I have, however, provided a folder for everyone with as much information as I thought was relevant to give everyone a chance to look it over before the hearing. Hermione trailed off as someone approached her. Good evening, Minister Tybalt. How are you? Jen smiled over Hermione's shoulder. Very well, thank you, Minister Stevenson. Hermione, as always, lovely to see you. Renaud smiled at her as he stepped up beside her. Have you heard Miss Granger's proposal, Minister? Jen tilted her head, her brown hair framing the glasses the witch wore. Not only have I heard of it, but France has already voted unanimously in favor of it. Renaud smiled proudly back at the Swedish minister. Unanimously? It has? Jen seemed a little thrown off by that knowledge. Renaud nodded. I believe that Portugal, Colombia, and Spain have all reviewed the information Hermione provided them recently and have already decided on their vote as well. Her head whipping round to look at the man who she had come to consider a friend in surprise. They have? Renaud straightened. Yes, sorry. I thought they had found you already. I was talking to them earlier, and they mentioned they were hoping to discuss the outcome with you tonight. Hermione inflated with anticipation, trying to get a read on Ren's face. A smile appeared promising. Well, that's brilliant, Hermione exclaimed. I must say, it's rather sparked my interest. You said you will be providing information folders? Ginny asked cautiously. Yes, Hermione smiled. They will be distributed at the end of the evening as each person leaves. Then I shall look forward to reading it, Jen smiled somewhat stiffly, giving the tip of her head in acknowledgement and strolling away. Hermione waited until she was out of earshot before she spun on Renaud. Do they all really have answers for me? Hermione bounced with excitement. It was amazing to know that she already had France and Ireland behind her. But if she could get a few more in the bag, then she would feel a lot less panicky about the fact that in 3 weeks' time, they would be going before the International Confederation Board where her petition would be heard. She only had 3 countries in support, and at least the same number again as being against it. The absence of Alicia did not go unnoticed by Hermione, nor did the absence of the Turkish magical president, who had not been very receptive to her so far. Yes, they do. I can see that asking you for a dance now would be pointless until you have your answers, so come along, we shall go find them. The gentlemen in question were lounging about in their chairs at the table, pecking at peanuts that she was almost certain had not been on Astoria's approved menu choices and laughing loudly with one another. Nicola smiled brightly at her approach. Hey, there she is. See, lads, I told you we would find her eventually. The man chuckled. Perhaps a little inebriated if the empty whiskey glasses were anything to go by. The Colombian president chuckled. Ignore him, Miss Granger. He cannot hold his liquor. Seemingly just as drunk, though. John Paris, the Spanish prime minister, indicated for her to sit and join them. We were looking for you earlier, but we found the bar instead, he exclaimed, with a bashful smile and a slight hiccup. Oh, Hermione laughed. The 3 of them reminded her of 3 drunk uncles one might see in a sitcom. I suppose that is a worthy distraction. We have news for you, Ballester started. It has been the consensus of the Colombian government that we are in favor of your proposal and hereby offer our support to the cause. Hermione straightened up and beamed. Oh, President Ballester, that is brilliant. Thank you so much. Hear, hear. Nikolai and John both cheered loudly, raising their glasses and sloshing them slightly. Balthasar shook his head in amusement. Drunken fools, the both of you. You're one to talk, John hiccuped. You were the one that needed to sit down, if I recall. You do not recall, John. This idiot stumbled into the table and fell into a chair. Balthasar jabbed his thumb at Nikolai. John looked to be thinking very hard about it before roaring with laughter. That's right! Nikolai looked outraged. Hey, it attacked me! Hermione giggled in amusement. She should probably arrange for their portkeys home to be distributed to their guards sooner rather than later. They would all no doubt be filling their hangovers tomorrow. Nikolai jumped at the sound of her laugh. Oh, Hermione, there you are. We were looking for you. Yes, she knows that. John chuckled and shook his head. I wanted to let you know that the president and I are in agreement to sign the petition, the Portuguese minister slurred. Spain, too, John hiccuped again. That is wonderful news, you 3. Thank you so much. Hermione clapped her hands together. Behind her, Renaud chuckled. Gentlemen, would you mind terribly if I stole Miss Granger for a dance? Nikolai waved her off excessively, accidentally smacking John in the face, who, after a moment of shock, burst into joint laughter with Nikolai. Not at all, not at all. Save a dance for me, would you? Of course, President, Hermione grinned and slipped away with Ronald toward the dance floor, catching Astoria on the arm on her way past the witch, who was seemingly having the time of her life gossiping away with a group of witches. Could you please organize the Portkeys to find their way to Nikolai, John, and Ballastar's guards shortly? Tell them there's no pressure, but it seems their bosses are not far from passing out. Hermione whispered into the blonde's ear, who giggled and nodded. Ronald twirled her before spinning her back to him, keeping the positions of their hands much more professional than the last time. Congratulations, the wizard smiled at her warmly. Thank you, Ren. Your support throughout all of this has been amazing. Hermione smiled at him. Her eyes landed on that of Louis, watching them protectively from the outskirts of the room. She gave him a small nod of acknowledgement that he returned with a half-smile. Nonsense. The only support I've given you has been what you have earned. If not for you, I would not still have Louis. And if it had been your British minister to approach me, then I likely would have turned him away. It was the insight to the brilliance that is your mind that led me here, Ronald said as he twirled them around habitually. Hermione didn't know the steps, but she found she didn't need to when Ren guided her the way he did. Do you want kids? Hermione asked suddenly. His eyes twinkled in understanding. I did see that part of your proposal, Hermione. I was rather intrigued. I won't deny it. However, I think that perhaps our lives are too secretive and chaotic at this stage for Louis and me to think about children. Hermione hummed in understanding. Yes, Pansy said something similar, Hermione mentioned casually. It wasn't quite how that conversation had gone with her housemate, but perhaps the seed would implant itself in the depths of his brain, and should they choose so, they could reach that conclusion on their own. And you, Ronald challenged. Hermione shook her head. Not in the cards for me. And your wizard knows that. Ronald looked far away, over her shoulder. Hermione turning her head and saw Draco watching her, not in a rage of jealousy this time, but as if he was admiring a classic painting. Blush rose in her cheeks, and the butterflies flipped. She nodded and turned her attention back to the French minister. He knows. He suggested we get a dog if the need ever presented itself. If he ever mistreats you, just know that I am willing to turn a blind eye for you, Ronald offered seriously. Hermione laughed loudly. I will keep that in mind. The song started to wind down just as Tom approached them. I was wondering if I could cut in for the next song. He smiled politely at the French minister. Ah, of course. Ronald withdrew a step and bowed to Hermione before disappearing into the crowd. Tom was a lot stiffer than Ronald had been, but no less friendly to her. It seems to have been a successful evening, he noted. Yes, I would say so. Astoria did a great job, Hermione hummed in agreement. I've been hearing a lot of people singing your praises too, Tom stated pointedly. Hermione tipped her head and thought. Perhaps, but I still think there's a lot of resistance. We may need to prepare for more infiltration in a few places, she whispered in a hushed tone. Tom scanned their surroundings carefully. I just received word that Italy has called for a vote of no confidence. Hermione gasped. That's brilliant. I believe I have swayed Germany and Thailand to come on board as well, Tom voted with a puffed-up sense of pride. Hermione smiled at him genuinely. This is going to happen, Tom. You watch. Then we just need to work on elevating your position again and again until you are at the forefront of every decision the world makes. With you on my side, I have no doubts, Tom praised before twirling her around under the watchful eye of almost every world leader in attendance.